Hello everybody, and welcome to the 65th edition of the Frankenstein Chat. And as you can see, it's just the two of us this week. Good morning, Stan.
Good morning, and welcome back after a 2-week break.
2-week break, yeah.
It felt very weird, actually.
I know. I was on holiday for the last 2 weeks, and I did miss the chat. I could have done it last Friday because it was just Arlene and myself, but the week before it was the whole family. So I would have been in everybody's bad books if I started spending time talking to you. But anyway, so what have you been doing the last 2 weeks then?
Well, shed extending in the last 2 weeks. Just my son has a bar in his shed, and it needs to be bigger apparently to get more people in. So we've extended it.
So how many people can you get in the current version of it?
Well, before we've extended it, I think the maximum was, I think we had 14 people in it. It's almost doubled in size now.
Well, perhaps we ought to do when we can get back together.
You want from the shed?
I think we should have it from the shed. There is a bar? I know there is.
There's a bar. There's Wi-Fi. There's TV.
Wow.
He's now concentrating on his music, so there's a record deck in there, and
right.
There's vinyls are going to be in there.
Well, can I also apologise if there's any background noise at my end this week, because we have a plasterer here sorting out the ceiling, which fell down when a water tank in our upstairs decided to burst, and so it's taken us months, and he's here today. But I think all the cutting and banging and everything's done. And I think it's probably just chatting to my wife and the plastering that we're going to hear. But anyway, we've been away for 2 weeks, but quite a lot's happened, both within education and in the world and in government. So what's caught your eye this week, Stan?
Well, there is literally so much. I mean, you can't deny that the situation in Afghanistan has dominated everything recently. But just prior to that, for me, it was the work being done on school hubs by the DFE, teaching hubs, and the not so subtle changes that have me rather concerned about what the end game is of teacher training and CPD and school improvement, and how that looks in somebody's grand plan.
Yeah, of course we had Sam Twistleton on, who's part of the advisory group, and also Rachel Lofthouse a couple of weeks ago, talking about this. Rachel much more understandably much more concerned about the direction, but one of the major, or a couple of the major universities have decided to not support the initiatives this week. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think London and Cambridge, I think. I don't know if they've actually pulled out or they've threatened to pull out.
I suppose the issue is that if there's ideology behind all of this, it's about control, and we have a preferred way of doing it, which we believe is the right way to do it. There is a point at which you might say, well, all right, the universities don't want to be part of it. They're a bit of a pain, let's lob it all to schools. But actually, I don't think there's anywhere near the capacity in the school sector to pick this up.
And there's probably less control over schools. I mean, what they have control over is funding. So what they're looking at is to say, well, if you're going to be funded as a school hub, one of the largest school teaching hubs now, that feed on average about 250 schools they support, the only CPD you can provide has to fall in line with what we're already doing. And the MPQ programs, you have to promote those, even if you don't
provide them. Yeah,
you have to promote our providers, which you would easily recognize the names at the top of the provider list.
Yes.
And I think the whole school hub thing was sold on outstanding schools being able to share their practice locally.
Yes.
And the whole thing has a definite anti-local look. No, you're not there to provide stuff that fits the context of the schools around you. You're there to provide stuff that the DFE approve of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's been I mean, from what I understand, from what I was reading, there was they've sort of rolled back on the delivery of it now and said they're going to wait till September to get all the replies in. But apparently there was a Zoom meeting which was quite
Yeah, I'd heard about that.
that schools were not happy with the direct, because you can imagine if you're a teaching hub and you've just been given, you know, a much bigger sense of responsibility, and your CPD program that you've developed since you heard you were going to get this, which is probably January, February, and now you're told no, actually you're not delivering any of that.
The problem is though, Stan, is if you've got people running those hubs though who are very sympathetic to government, actually the system is in a sense stacked up against you if you're standing there saying, well, I want some greater level of freedom to this, but actually they'd only need a majority of voices, you know, and and everybody's voice, some people's voices, it may be an individual voice, but in the sector carries a bit more weight, you know, so you perhaps wouldn't even need to have the majority. You just need to have a few big hitters who could come in and support it, and it's going to happen. That's my concern.
I think the risk that they're not seeing is that the income that schools generate through providing CPD is significant. And if you are a large hub and you've by this time you've got a staffing team linked,
yes.
Then what's going to happen is you're going to be doing some CPD through the back door or through another school and having some agreement with them. They haven't got control over that, and they can't get control over it. So I just think it's a flawed way of thinking. I'm sure it's come from ministers, or minister, maybe even singular, because there was a question asked of, you know, is this ever going to change? And they said only when we get a new minister, was the response.
well, there's a minister who's basically carved a niche for himself in the department, and I'm not sure whether there's any other minister who has had a brief in one department as long as that minister. And I think there was, I mean, I do believe that, you know, in many cases ministers move from one department to another. And I seem to remember the health minister, after the Hancock affair, the Sajid Javid, after one day was actually making an announcement about something or other, you know, and you think, well, actually, you know, yesterday you weren't the health minister. Now you're meant to be the authoritative voice. And actually, I think that we've reached a point here where perhaps some ministers stay too long and become a bit of a problem. And certainly, you know, I think that this is where that I mean, we just have it with particular ministers about preferred practice. This is all preferred practice stuff again.
I think it's a belief. It's a belief that I know. And my personal thoughts have always been, if there's a silver bullet to teaching, in 100 years,
it would have been discovered. Because
if there was a way to teach that's very effective, very efficient, and easy to do, teachers would have taken that up. The fact is, there isn't a silver bullet, and there isn't one way to do things. You've got to be responding to different children at different levels in different contexts, and that doesn't seem to be in the grand plan.
No, but it's interesting because what's caught my eye this week relates to this. I want us to get onto Afghanistan, because I do think there's some interesting issues in there around leadership. But if we a couple of weeks ago, I read the Institute for Government's review of the working of the Department for Education during the COVID crisis. And basically what I'd urge everybody to have a read of it. It's about 40 pages long. It's nicely written. it's quite chatty. It's not written as a sort of like a formal sort of academic report. So from that point of view, it's a really interesting read. But the gist of it is that, in effect, decisions were made not to divert all resources into the COVID response because of the fear that that would mean that other priorities would not get the attention they require in order to drive forward policy after COVID. And ITT must have fallen into that territory as a good example. But also other things, there are other things that have been going on, which in effect, whether or not that's even just sprinkler systems, building safety, all of this sort of stuff,
Ventilation.
Yeah, you think, well, actually, I can't think of any. I think if you had a conversation with the general public and sat down and explained to them that actually we've got a Department of Education which is managing the worst national disaster since World War II and has decided not to put every single shoulder to the wheel to support schools, to keep children safe, simply because they want to do some other priorities when they come out of the pandemic. I cannot think that there are many people out there that would think that is a really good decision. And that what's behind this, in my view, is ideology.
Yeah.
We have this opportunity. We're going to change. The teacher training is going to change. And we will do that regardless of what else we have to face. And I think that must have affected the effectiveness of the response to COVID. And that came out very strongly from that report.
It's there is no plan B bit as well, because if we have a plan B, people might prefer the plan B.
Plan B,
So we don't even have one. And I remember last September, you and I said, right, now's the time to start planning for a no exam year. So what schools should be doing now, or DFE should be doing now, is putting schools in groups, getting them to start working together, to moderate work, to have a feel for work, blah blah blah. That wasn't considered. Well, may have been considered, but it wasn't going to be a plan, because plan A was we will have exams.
I know, and the problem with that approach is that is an outlet for a future way of managing exams. And in a way, in effect, the world did not collapse.
No,
through teacher assessment. There's a lot of things here around grade inflation, but actually at GCSE level, and there were disadvantages. I think it's terrible the way that critics or supporters of exams have used the example that actually some of the most disadvantaged children did not do as well because we didn't have exams. No, that's not the reason. Because we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's as if to say, well, we're justifying it now because actually, if we had exams, that would not have highlighted the fact that some children in this country have been adversely affected by the pandemic. I mean, it's really interesting. Liz Robinson, who we had as a guest a couple of weeks ago, she spoke to Andy Haldane, who was one of the Bank of England economists, and he's come out of that role now. And she was talking about exams and trying to explain to Andy about the perverse nature of exams and how that they actually suppress. They don't encourage. They suppress ambition for a large percentage, a reasonably large percentage of young people.
I don't think the country as a whole realizes how the exam system is structured, so that actually, technically, schools can't improve.
No.
Because there is a limit. They run a system where only so many can achieve so much. So it doesn't matter how much better the system is, you can't achieve. They would call it grade inflation. You can't improve grades without somebody saying it's grade inflation.
But also, if I improve, Stan, you've got to go down.
Yeah.
In a way, because there's only so many tickets that will allow you to pass go. And
I'm not sure if it still is, but it used to be based on the Key Stage 2 results. So secondary schools couldn't really do any better than Key stage.
Stephen Gorard, Professor Stephen Gorard, I think I mentioned it again a few weeks ago, had a PhD student whose research was approved, so she has the PhD title, but that actually basically said that whatever measure of performance, the strongest indicator is how well the kids did at the key stage 2. So the attainment that they're bringing into it is the key factor. And in a way, that plays neatly into that GCSE argument, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that interesting, all of that.
Well, I think there's an element of questioning it when you say schools have continued to improve over the last 20 years, but actually the results are very much the same.
Yeah, well, don't get. I mean, Nick Gibb, the minister, was talking about trying to justify the improvements that have been made, because in a way he was challenged about the relative performance of the most disadvantaged, and he said, well, actually, to prove it, then actually 85% of schools are now good, but actually that decision to make 85% of them is similar to the decision that's made about GCSE passes, in that there is no natural bell curve with regard to Ofsted. If you look at this from 2010, 2012, where the Wilshaw era, into where we are now, we have seen rampant grade inflation in Ofsted inspections at a time when there's been austerity. I'm trying to sort of figure these two things out. All that's happened is that there's been a very good press campaign to say that Ofsted inspections are very rigorous and whatever, but they're actually just affecting a very small proportion of the country, those that are serving the most disadvantaged communities. So while it does that, the vast majority of people don't give a damn about Ofsted because we're still good. And actually all that's happened is that the target group is the most disadvantaged. So those schools serve the most disadvantaged communities.
And in those days where we had parents' meetings, I mean, I did a lot of inspections in those times. I never ever met a parent group that thought their school was a problem. They all thought the other schools in the country were a problem.
Yes,
what the man on Sunday told them.
Yeah.
They were all, we're really lucky to have this really good school. Well, actually, I've been to a school 5 miles away, and they're really lucky as well, and the other are really lucky. And there's that feeling that somehow schools are failing all over the country, but luckily not ours.
It's like another false story about behaviour came out this week, I think, as well. I did visit. I haven't visited in the last year or so because of COVID. When I walked around schools, I did not see schools, secondary schools particularly, that children were badly behaved. They were disrespectful. No doubt there were some children in some classes, in some year groups, who were not as well taught. But if there are people out there who don't visit schools very often, do not get the impression that the kids are running the schools. They're not. And that's another false story. In order to enable them to do stuff around, whether it be mobile phones, or whether it's about school uniform, or whether it's how teachers teach children, it's all around that debate.
Yeah, well, I was laughing I think it was yesterday. It's not something to laugh about, but Dominic Raab, the department, issued a photograph of him at his desk working. Equally, I don't know if you saw the one of Boris Johnson acknowledging an 11 o'clock silence, where if you blew up the picture, his watch said 11:15.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
What behind him said 11 o'clock. You're not even very good at lying.
No.
Nobody's convinced of a picture of Dominic Raab now at his desk, really under pressure, because actually he was on the beach.
I know. Well, we must talk about this, because what we do here, for those who are just watching Frank and Stan chat haven't been with us for very long, we always try and focus on education. So when an incident occurs, like the Dominic Raab issue this week, or with the Matt Hancock issue a few months ago, we always try and draw that into, well, what would this feel like in a school setting?
Yeah.
So here we have something that I think a bit like GCSEs and A Level results. We know this is coming. So there was I don't think there was any surprise that the withdrawal of UK troops and Allied Forces troops and American troops was going to happen. It appeared to be that the September is it the 9th September, the Twin Tower, 11th, is a critical date, I think, in lots of people's minds, that actually if there was a withdrawal, it'd be better to occur before that date. So it's pretty clear to most lay people that this is going to be a bit of an issue now. I think, I'm only surmising that somebody in the Raab family decided that the family needed a break, and who wouldn't want to have a break in a very, very, very expensive, exclusive Crete hotel. And actually, and you can imagine the conversation. But the kids are looking forward to it. We haven't been away for ages. Now we've got this one opportunity. But actually, at that point, the minister should have said, "I'm really sorry, you'll have to go without me."
Yeah. No, I am, in actual fact, not in a job. I am effectively deputy prime minister of a country.
Yes.
So I don't get to book a week's leave it's just.
But GCSE A Level results, the head teacher's not there. Yeah. Where is he? The results are pathetic. They've gone through the floor. What, he's on a beach in Crete?
Yeah.
I cannot believe that head teacher would be able to withstand the furore that went on about that. And actually, I think many governors would be after them, to get them out and say, reputation, this is awful. Parents would be, what would the kids? The kids themselves. Where's the head?
It's like a Ofsted arriving and the head's in a conference or something. You just don't stay there.
No.
And the build up to it, the fact that it wasn't predicted. Nobody predicted it at the speed that things changed. But as you say, it was very predictable that something would happen, and certainly we knew that things were happening at least a week ago, maybe even longer. And at that point, you can't then say, "Well, I'm too busy to take phone calls. I'm on holiday."
Yeah, I agree.
You can't do that and keep your job. It's not as if this is what gets me about ministers, etc. When they resign, they don't lose very much.
No.
They're still an MP. They're still in the they could even still be in the cabinet if they want them to be. But you have to make a point. And I saw a tweet last night supporting Dominic Raab. And it looks like that's been a really bad mistake by the person who's obviously been put under pressure by the whips.
Yes.
Send out this standard thing, and there was no supporting comments to it. So I think that may have been somebody shooting themselves in the foot. Well, it's that we it doesn't matter what we do, we just carry on.
I know. See, the thing is, though, is that if this is allowed at that level, then actually I'm thinking, well, why don't the heads just go and have a holiday in Crete when the exams are on? Just ride through it. Just say, no, I'm not resigning. There is a completely different rule set of rules for ministers and for this government particularly than any other I've known before. It was interesting. I think, was it Jim Callaghan? I think he lost a vote by one vote. And that he felt that at that point, this was in the sort of mid-70s, wasn't it? That at that point, he ought to call a general election because he lost a vote in Parliament by one vote. We are so far away from that level of accountability, and
well, who was it in the Labour team that was asked to resign because they were drinking a gin and tonic on a
It was a Diane Abbott.
drinking a gin and tonic on an underground, a tin of gin and
No.
Resign.
But that is the issue, though, isn't it? That you can get. Where does that sort of level of accountability stop? So how high up the food chain in any institution do you get to where you think, well, I'm immune to that, and I can just get on with it.
In schools, you think about it, a loss of confidence in the leadership by the governing body is enough to say, actually, you're out.
Yeah.
We've lost confidence in your ability to do this job properly.
Yeah.
And for teachers, for bringing the school into disrepute, doing something that's not considered proper for a teacher is enough, whether it's at home or it's on holiday. And those kind of standards are applied in schools, I think, most schools. Very rigorously. That if you are to do something that causes the school's reputation to be damaged, you're likely to lose your job.
Yeah.
If you have led a school so badly that the governors have lost confidence in your ability to do it, you lose your job. That just doesn't seem to apply if you are part of this current government.
There's also a naivety, or is it naivety or arrogance, that actually, bearing in mind where we are with COVID and people on furlough, still on furlough, and the economy not, okay, is it recovering? Well, it's beginning to show some signs of recovery. Well, it probably couldn't get any worse. It had to recover, from being so low. Is it really in everyone's best interest for ministers to be going off on very, very expensive holidays in Crete, in luxurious boutique hotels? Is that really the look that we want to convey? To me, it wouldn't be. I don't object to people going on holiday. Don't get me wrong. The timing for Dominic Raab could not have been worse. But what made it even worse, on top of that, was this sense of exclusivity about it, as if, and people starting to question out, well, who paid for that? Some astronomical amounts of money have been suggested as to the cost of a 7-night holiday for a family there.
Wasn't the Prime Minister on holiday as well?
He was as well, yes. For one day.
Yeah.
It is truly unbelievable. It's like the head and the deputy going on holiday on GCSE and A Level results day, isn't it? Really?
When the likely to be. Let's make it clear, when it's likely to be a chaotic time.
I know, yeah.
Let's add an extra bit to that.
Yeah.
And somebody rings to say, can you talk to this parent? It's really important. Say, no, I'm busy.
I'm busy, yeah. And then actually, as it turned out, I delegated that to my deputy, but he didn't make the call either. And then another minister saying, well, the call didn't really need to be because it would have done no good whatsoever. Well, A, he didn't know that. He doesn't know that for sure. And B, what's he saying then about the senior civil servants who were advising the minister to make the phone call? And if he couldn't make it, to get somebody else to make it. They wouldn't have been asking somebody to do that unless they thought it was of value,
Well, equally, didn't the American equivalent make the phone call for their, their side, and that actually worked?
Right. Well,
it's just you just wake up every day with something that actually blows your mind to think that we're in this position.
I know.
And jobs aren't going, and people aren't resigning, and a large percentage of the country still think
everything's great. Yeah, everything's great. I mean, we're nearly at the end here, Stan, but when you think that school's going back,
have you seen the guidance?
I know.
I've not read
Honestly, I wonder. I don't mind Nick Gibb or Gavin Williamson saying, "Well, put them out in the playground." If it's a bit of a problem. Who the hell in the Department for Education is advising these ministers? They've never led a school in their life, but they're meant to have people that do know about this sort of stuff,
Yeah.
I mean, they are miles away from reality.
If you've got 5 children or 5 staff off with COVID, having tested positive, not just isolated,
No.
having tested positive, then perhaps you should do your lessons outside. What, one lesson, all lessons, all classes? Well,
Has anybody tried to, I mean, just imagine what October would be like, early October. You
yeah.
know,
We're going to do
the leaves are falling off the trees, the wind's blowing round your ears, the kids are shouting like hell.
Yeah, we're going to do assembly on the field now, everyone. So we'll have assembly on the field, and then we'll all go back into school because it's raining, and we'll all crowd back into an unventilated way. And if you think we need to open the windows, you'll have to wear coats.
But I mean, in a way, this is where the credibility falls away, isn't it? Where, this is what makes, just finishing off the conversation, DFE driving through an ideology around teacher training and development and whatever, all that credibility falls apart when you look at their decisions that they're making about schools operationally, to give guidance as to how to manage all of this. You think you don't know what you're doing. No. You don't know what you're doing.
Or just come and show me how operationally that would work.
Yes.
Just come to my school and show me how we decide, because we've got some children with COVID, we run our lessons outside from now on.
I also think that there is a sense that they think that some ministers think that the schools are out to just do it a different way, and I'm not convinced. I think they don't. There are no doubt schools that want to do things in a different way. There are as we've said today, a variety of approaches, but the vast majority of schools will want to do the right thing.
The best thing.
And it's not as if when you go out there, when we talk about variety or variation in approaches, we're not seeing a spectrum here, a massive. It's like the bell curve. We're seeing a lot of schools in that center situation. There are, some schools out here and some schools, but the vast majority of them are dealing in a very consistent way. So if people are here thinking, oh, it's a free for all, it's not. So we can go to schools and I walk in and I get a clear sense this is a bit like many of the other schools I visit. So I think
we've got a vast majority. You go to almost all school leaders whose drive is to do the very best by the children and the community that they serve, and are almost exhausted at the end of this last term, and are now looking to a new year where things haven't changed, apart from you are more likely to have a COVID spreading in your school than ever before.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. And mitigation.
Yeah, right. Well, we are back on next Friday, Stan. We have a guest, so hopefully I'll be away. So we're going to try something slightly different. Stan's going to do the recording this time. So if it all falls apart,
nobody will see this one.
and also, can I also say, really like the theme tune that Richard Dawson produced for us, which I managed to get on one of the videos, but because I was in the sort of caravan in North Wales last week, I couldn't do it on my laptop. I'll try and do it this week. But I know that Rick was disappointed that we didn't use it last week, and I just wanted to say it was nothing to do with the quality of the theme tune, which we really like and we will continue using, but it was just the fact that I didn't have the technology to do it. So thank you, Rick, who is in Modena in Italy now living. Okay, so I'll see you next Friday, Stan.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, and have a good week, everyone.